Hey man, let me tell you something counterintuitive. The more you try, the less she cares. The harder you work for her attention, the more invisible you become. Because the secret isn't in the grand gestures, the over-the-top compliments, the desperate attempts to prove your worth. The secret is in the absence of all that. The secret is in doing less and meaning more. Most guys think effort equals attraction. They believe if they pour enough energy into chasing, convincing, performing, she'll finally see their value. But here's the brutal truth. Effort is invisible when it's expected. Power is invisible when it's effortless. You want to stand out, stop competing in the race. No one respects. Minimal effort isn't laziness, it's precision. It's the understanding that 90% of what men do to attract women actually repels them. The texts that are too long, the plans that are too detailed, the emotions that are too available. None of it works because none of it is rare. But the man who moves with quiet intention, the man who doesn't explain himself, doesn't seek validation, doesn't fill every silence with nervous energy, that's the man she can't ignore. Think about it like this. When you walk into a room and don't scan for reactions, when you speak slowly because you're not afraid of silence, when you listen more than you talk, she notices, not because you're doing something flashy, because you're doing something different. And different is magnetic. The first law, the less you react, the more she wonders. The less you seek, the more she offers. Most men are like open books, predictable, easy to read, easy to discard. But you're the blank page. And blank pages don't beg for attention, they command it. Let's talk about texting. Most guys destroy attraction, one message at a time. They double text, they over-explain, they send paragraphs when a single word would have been stronger. But the man who understands minimal effort, he knows the power of the unanswered message, the delayed reply, the one-word response that leaves her staring at her phone, wondering why she's the one overthinking. That's how you flip the script, not by chasing, by allowing. Minimal effort creates tension, and tension is the birthplace of desire. When you don't rush to fill the silence, she does. When you don't rush to make plans, she suggests them. When you don't rush to reassure her, she starts reassuring you. This isn't manipulation, it's psychology. People want what they have to work for, not because they're difficult, because they're human. The second law, the more you appear to need, the less you actually get. Needy energy is repulsive. It's the scent of desperation, the vibe of scarcity. But the man who operates from a place of minimal effort, he radiates abundance, not because he has more, but because he needs less. And that's irresistible. Let's talk about dates. Most men plan elaborate outings, fancy dinners, expensive events, all to prove they're worth her time. But the man who understands minimal effort, he keeps it simple. A drink, a walk, a conversation where he's fully present instead of performing. And guess what? She remembers him, not the backdrop. Because minimal effort isn't about what you do, it's about who you are while you're doing it. The third law, the less you say, the more she hears. Most men think attraction is built through words. They believe if they can just explain themselves well enough, she'll feel something. But real connection doesn't happen in language, it happens in silence. In the space between sentences, in the way you hold eye contact a second longer than necessary. That's where the magic is, not in your words, in your absence of them. Minimal effort is a filter. It separates the women who are genuinely interested from the ones who just like attention. The woman who's truly attracted to you will meet you halfway. She'll match your energy. She'll invest. The others, they'll fade away. And that's exactly what you want. Because minimal effort isn't about getting every woman. It's about keeping the right ones. The fourth law, the more comfortable you are with walking away, the less you ever have to. Most men cling. They tolerate disrespect, ignore red flags, and settle for less, all because they're afraid of losing what little they have. But the man who practices minimal effort, he's always ready to leave, not as a threat, as a fact. And that changes everything. Let's talk about social media. Most guys post to impress. They curate their lives for validation. They react to every story, like every photo, and drown in the digital noise. But the man who understands minimal effort, he's barely there. And that's why she checks his profile more, because presence is measured by absence. The fifth law, the less you validate her, the more she seeks yours. Compliments are cheap when they're given freely. Attention is meaningless when it's always available, but the man who gives just enough, never too much, never on demand, becomes the standard. And once you're the standard, she'll move mountains to stay in your world. Minimal effort isn't passive, it's strategic. It's the understanding that the loudest man in the room is rarely the most respected, that the most eager man is rarely the most desired. Power doesn't shout, it whispers, and whispers are what make people lean in. The sixth law: the less you reveal, the more she discovers. Most men spill their entire lives on the first date. They talk about their dreams, their fears, their past, thinking vulnerability equals attraction. But the man who practices minimal effort, he lets her uncover him, layer by layer, conversation by conversation. And that's how obsession is built. Let's talk about confidence. Most men try to fake it. They puff their chests, force deep voices, and pretend they're unfazed. But the man who understands minimal effort, he doesn't try to be confident. He simply is. Because confidence isn't something you do, it's something you don't do. Like seeking approval, like needing reassurance, like over-explaining. The seventh law: the less you care, the more she does. This isn't about being cold, it's about being complete. When you don't need her, she starts needing you. When you're not afraid to lose her, she becomes afraid to lose you. That's the paradox of minimal effort. Let's talk about masculinity. Most men confuse it with aggression, with dominance, with forcing their way into respect. But real masculinity is restraint. It's the ability to have power and not abuse it, to have desire and not chase it, to have strength and not flaunt it. That's minimal effort in its purest form. The eighth law: the less you react, the more she reflects. Most men are like mirrors. They reflect a woman's emotions right back at her. If she's upset, they panic. If she's distant, they chase. But the man who practices minimal effort, he's the wall her emotions hit. And walls don't flinch. That's how you become her calm in the chaos. Minimal effort is leadership. It's not about controlling her, it's about controlling yourself. When you're unfazed by her moods, unshaken by her tests, unmoved by her drama, she has no choice but to rise to your level. Because you're not playing her game, you're setting the rules. The ninth law: the less you force, the more flows. Attraction can't be negotiated. It can't be begged for. It can only be allowed. And minimal effort is how you create the space for it to grow. Let's talk about mystery. Most men are open books, easy to read, easy to put down. But the man who understands minimal effort, he's the book with blank pages. And nothing is more intriguing than a story yet to be told. The 10th law: the less you show, the more she sees. When you're not trying to impress, you become impressive. When you're not trying to attract, you become attractive. That's the invisible power of minimal effort. So here's your challenge: do less, mean more. Let her come to you. Let her wonder about you. Let her work for you. Not because you're playing games, because you're playing the game. And minimal effort. That's how you win without fighting.